Hello. So, uh, hello everyone. I think we'll wait 1 or 2 minutes before starting. So we'll start. Uh, it's 5 5. Hello everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Uh, Today we have gathered here for HackVerse 3.0 made by HackVerse series. So let's start by introducing HackVerse. HackVerse is before our nationwide hackathon to motivate brilliant minds to brainstorm solutions that can solve challenging real-world problems from all over the world, all over the country. We aim to provide a stage for trailblazing innovations where developers can analyze real-world obstacles and let their creativity abound. Uh, we are from National Institute of Technology, Karnataka, Surat, and we have established HackWords as one of the top a top nationwide student hackathons across the country. In our continuing drive to innovate technologically, we bring to you Hackwords, the Make with Hackwords series. That is a workshop series that we aim for people to learn before starting to uh, participate in Hackwords. For this workshop, we will design a basic judging platform using Django. It will have users and judges, and points system and results will be supported. This is also a scaled-down version of the app that we are actually going to make. We have Anirudh here. He's a second year EC student and he's the speaker for today's webinar. He's part of the HackWorks tech team. He's active member of IRIS and IEEE Club of NITK. And he has done prior internship at ML for Bharat, AI for Bharat. And for this workshop, the prerequisites are Python, HTML, and Bootstrap. Although prior knowledge of Django is recommended, but it's not necessary. So, Anirudh, you can have the stage.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Anirudh, and so today we'll be making an evaluation platform using Django. So it's a very basic platform, and before I go into the details of that, I'd like to introduce like what Django is. So Django is one of the web frameworks that is in Python. There are a lot, but Django is like one of the most prominent ones. Uh, the deciding factor of Django is that it has a lot of batteries included. So what that means is that it has a lot of modules already pre-built into the core application itself. For example, we have authentication and authorization pre-built in, and there's also an admin dashboard which is pre-built in, and we do not have to create the dashboard itself. And it is highly scalable, highly stress tested, and it is used by some of the biggest companies like Instagram, Discuss, and the Mozilla website, Mozilla service itself. And it is a model view template architecture. Django follows a model view template architecture. So what that means is that this is the basic design cycle for a Django application. So we see that as a client, we will be actually we will make a request to the server. So this diagram is actually for for an application which is in production. So it also has a Nginx or an Apache server, but we will not be building something that is this sophisticated. Um, but the core concepts of the request response cycle is the same. So as a client, we will first be making a request to the server, which will first go through the middlewares. So once the middleware is processed, it will go through the URL router. So what this does is it checks our URL files to see which URL that we have requested matches which function. And once it finds a particular hit, it will it will know which view it should process so that it can provide you the output. If there is no URL which matches the request that we have made, it will show a 404 page. Now when we come to views, views are basically our the core logic of the function, which will communicate with the database in the form of an ORM, which is the object relational model. That ORM will fetch data from the database and it will return it back to the view in a way that is queryable by Python in a simple API. Once that is done, every view will either render a context. So what that means is that the view will return a particular HTML element so that it can be used by the template. So now the template is basically the HTML file itself. Django uses a templating language called Jinja, which enables us to write Python within HTML. This is all rendered by the template, and then it is sent to the response middlewares, which is then again sent to the core server that we are using, and then it is displayed to the client in the browser. So yeah, for this project, we will be using two main models. One of them will be the user model, which is pre-built within Django. So we do not have to do a lot of hacking to actually make that users. Although Django does support building a custom user model, we will not be doing that in this webinar. The other model that we'll be doing is a submissions model, which will actually be recording all the submissions that a particular student that all the students are making. So now if we look at the views and the templates, so we will be having a login and all the authentication related views, which means login, logout, and the register view. We will have a submission dashboard. We will have a student dashboard. So these are basically admin and student dashboards. So based on who we are logging in as, we will be seeing different dashboards. There will also be a form entry where we can actually upload what our form is. There will be a scoring view for the admin where they can add the marks, and then there will be a final scoreboard. So yeah, let's get into the proper application. Okay, so right now I'm doing a demo of the application. This is what we'll be building at the end. So as we can see, we are logging in as the admin account right now. And yeah, we see that welcome to admin dashboard and we see the submissions are here. But as there have been no submissions yet, there are no submissions yet, so we can't see anything on that. And yeah, and if we log out, then if we want to use the Django's inbuilt admin interface, then we can go to this. Once we log in here, it will also see that we have the submissions model here and there aren't any submissions as of now. Yeah. And another thing is that we'll be creating this register view and the login view. So let's get started. So yeah, this was for the demo project. Okay. Yeah, so I have a brand new folder. I'll open the terminal here. Okay, so since this is in a Python, it is highly recommended that we create a virtual environment so that there are no dependency issues with our system Python files. So I am just going to create a virtual environment with the name env. Yeah, it will take some time to create the local instance of Python. As we can see that there is this env folder which is being generated, which is just like a local environment instance of Python so that we can run everything within this container itself. So yeah, now we will activate the env. Since I am right now on Windows, so my command is a bit different. Mine is env/script/activate. If you are on a Unix-based system, you will actually have a command like source env/bin/activate. So this will be the command that you will have to run. Okay, now that we have now started the virtual environment, we can see that because our terminal is now preceded by this env in brackets. So now we will actually install Django. So this shouldn't take a lot of time, and yeah, so it's just installing the packages that have been collected. Yeah, and I have successfully installed Django. Okay, so this gives me access to a function called Django admin. I will start a brand new project now, start project, evaluations, and Yeah. So this will scaffold the basic files that are needed. So I will open this in code, in Visual Studio Code. So yeah, so now we see that there is this manage.py file. This will be our entry point for most of the application. So in this case, where we used Django admin start project, instead of that, now we'll be using manage.py itself. So let us go quickly, and just to make sure that this installation is proper, we'll run the server right now. And as we see, okay, we have this error saying that you have 18 unapplied migrations. So I will come to that in just 1 second, but right now I will just demo the application itself. So yeah, so now we have this, the install has worked successfully, congratulations. Okay, great. So now let's talk about this error that we have. So what this means is that we have not set up a database yet. So whenever we are creating any changes, we need to create them into migrations, and then we have to apply those migrations. So in order to run the migrations, it is very simple: Python manage.py migrate. Now this will apply all the migrations that would have to be done, and it will also create the database here. So in this case, it is using an SQLite 3 database that is being created by default. Okay, so now we have the basic app setup. Now basic project setup. Now let us begin the app. So with the syntax is fairly simple. We do a start app, and I am going to name the app called submissions. Yeah, so now if we go to code, we see that now there's a folder called submissions with a migrations folder. It has the admin apps, models.py, tests, and views. So now that we've created an app, we need to instruct Django that, okay, this app has been made and now we have to register it. So if you go to apps.py, we have a configuration file. Let's just copy this name of the configuration. We go to the project settings and we see these installed apps. So what we do is we will just add this as submissions.apps.the config class that we had. So this will show that this particular app has been now associated with this particular project. So now whatever we do with the python.managepy file, it will also show up for this particular app that we are building. Okay, so now that we have included our app here, the next job is to create models. So as I said, we will have a submissions model, and all models in Django are classes, and they inherit from models.model. As you can see, from Django, we are importing models, and every class is an instance of model.model. So here we will create a submission class, which will inherit from models.model. Okay, so every submission should have a particular user related to it. Now, because we are using the inbuilt user model, we can just import that here quickly. So django.contrib.auth.models import user. Okay, so now because we are limiting a particular user to have only one submission, we will create it as models.one-to-one field. As we can see, we will have to define what what model we wanted to have a one-to-one field to. And another which is a necessary element in Django is this on delete option. So what on delete basically does is, in the case that a particular user is deleted, what do you want to happen to this submission which is associated to this user? So one of the most common thing is model.cascade, which will just delete all the associated user submissions if a particular user is also deleted. Okay. So along with the submission user, we also want them to enter the URL to their submission. So models dot, we have a URL field. We will allow it to blank to be true, but we will not allow null to be true. And then we have finally marks. So we have models dot integer field, and then we have blank is true and null is true. Now why we are keeping null is true is that when a particular student is making a submission, initially there will be no marks allotted to it. Only when the particular admin will check if the submission has been made, that is when the marks will show up. Okay, so this is basically the model. Now we'll also define a special function which will just make our life easier. So what the underscore underscore string function does is that this is like a magic function in Python. What it does is it tells Django how to show the name of a particular submission in the admin module. So what we want to do is we want to return users, the username of the user. Okay, so this is our model here. This looks good. Okay, now once we have made the model, we have to create the migrations for it. So the creating for migration is also simple only. We have to python manage.py make migrations. Yeah, so now we see that migration for submissions, that is the name of our app, created a model submission, which is what we wanted. Now that we have made this migration, we will actually migrate it. Okay, applying submissions. Now in the database, the table for submissions has been made. Okay. Now for this to show up on the admin panel, we have to do one more thing. In this admin.py, we have to register our model. So how we do that is first we will import our model submission, and in the admin.site, we will register the model as submission. Okay. Now, if we log into the admin site, we will see that the submission model is also there. However, to log into the admin site, only a super user can do that. So we will create that right now very quickly. It is again very clear as to what the command should be. It's python manage.py create super user. So now this will ask for username. I will enter as admin, and yeah. So this is what I was saying about batteries being included. Now Django sees that the password is too. There are like some issues with the password, and if we were trying to make this using the simple web interface, it will actually show this error and not allow us to create it. But since we are making it from the terminal, it assumes that we know what we are doing. So it is giving us an option to bypass the validation. So since this is in just for development purposes, I will bypass the validation. However, when you are actually deploying this to the web, you should make sure that these errors do not come and your password is strong. So now let us just run the server. Yes, no issues were identified. Okay, so now the server is running, and now if I go to admin, I have the admin file. And okay, so now as you can see in submissions, I have access to the submission model now. So if I want, I can add the submission from here itself, but we will make it from the home page itself. Okay, so now that admin is also done, yeah, and we have added this to the models. Okay, now the next job is to create URLs. So the every project has its URLs file itself here. However, it is not a very common practice to actually write all the URLs within the main project folder itself. Instead, what we do is we create a URLs file for every single app. So we will do that quickly. So in submissions, we will make a new file called urls.py, and from django.urls, we will import path. Okay, so now URL patterns. Okay, so when Django will now, what it will do is it will go through the list of URL patterns that are given, and it will find whatever matches. So for example, we did admin right now. So what it did was when it saw that, okay, the admin has a request, then it redirected to admin.site.urls. So now similarly, what we want to do is whenever it goes to the home page, that means whenever it goes to our root URL, we want it to go to the URL files of our submissions app so that it can search for the particular URL here. So how we do that is we will just include that file here. So first of all, we import the include function, and then we will include submissions.urls. Okay. So now whenever the request will come to the root, it will go through the submissions.urls folder. Okay. So now what does our submissions.url folder have? Okay, let's say that at the core, we wanted to show a login view. Okay, that is like what we have to do. So whenever a user comes to our profile, it will use a login. Now, one of the advantages, as I mentioned before, of being all batteries included is that Django already has made provisions for these authentication views. So what we will do right now, we will just import it immediately. So we have from django.contrib.auth import views as auth views. So now we are just importing the authorization views that Django itself provide. And for the login, we will have auth views dot login view dot as view because we want to render it as a view. And this is a very good practice to actually name all the models because it will come in handy later. Name all the URLs because it will come in handy later when we are trying to create dynamic links. So okay, now we have auth views as login views. So now let's see what happens. Okay, the server is running right now. Let us check what happens when we go to the admin page. Okay, it shows that the template does not exist at registration slash login.html. This error is coming because, one second. Yeah. Okay, so this error is coming because actually whenever we're using the authentication view itself, Django actually expects the template to be at a file called registration slash login.html. So quickly we will create a templates folder where we will include our registration folder, and in that we will have login.html. Okay, so now if we have HTML, this is just the boilerplate that has come up. We will have evaluation, and if I say hello, this is login page. Okay, so now Django should effectively find this particular page and display it. Okay, so now what we see is that we are still getting the error. So template slash registration slash login.html. Registration. Yeah. Okay. So now there is a form actually being sent here. So we will quickly just add the form here. Form dot as p. We have to mention that the method is in post, and we have to add CSRF token here. Okay. Now let me check if this works. Okay, so now we see that there is a login page, and our Django application has already developed the form for the application. So now there are a few lines of code which I have done, which I think requires a bit of explanation. So what we have done here is this heading is pretty self-evident. We are just showing the login page. The form tag opens up with the method of post. So whenever we submit this form, it will make a post request instead of a get request. That is how authorization, usually how sensitive information such as login, username and password is actually sent. Now, after that, immediately I am importing something called CSRF token in these curly braces. So, as I mentioned before, Python Django actually allows you to has a templating system called Jinja. So, what enables is it enables two sort of tags. One is this type, and the other is this type. So the main difference between this is that whatever is in these curly braces, they will actually be Python code. But the difference is that the ones with the percentages will only be run internally and the output will not be shown to the user, whereas those in these double braces will be shown to the user. So right now what we're doing is we have this will run the particular code that I'm calling, which is called CSRF token. So now what does CSRF token mean? It's cross-site for forgery request. So what this does is that this creates a unique token which will prevent such attacks happening. As I mentioned before, Django, because it includes all batteries, it also includes this safety measures to make sure that our forms are actually safe. So for example, now if we go to this and we inspect this, uh, yeah, so we will see that there has been an hidden input called CSRF middleware token, which has this random long alphanumeric string. This is used by Django's middleware to authenticate that this form is actually coming from this application itself and not from some malicious users. Okay, so now we will see if this actually works. So now button, we will add type as submit, and we will do login. Okay, so now Okay, empty. Okay, I have not removed these tags. Okay, so this shows this. I will try logging in with my admin credentials. Let us see what shows. Okay, so this means that the page has not been found. Why? Because it redirects to account slash profile. So this means that my login has actually completed, since now I can directly go to admin. My login has completed, but because of the way that Django is set up, it actually redirects you to the slash account slash login page, slash account slash profile page. So we will be also changing that. But now we see that the login page has basically been done with just one file and one line of code. Similarly, we will just add a logout link with the same. We'll do auth views. We'll get logout view dot as view, and we will do name is logout. Okay. So now that we have logged in, now if I go just to log out again, okay, that we have been logged out. So now we have our login and logout routes prepared. Okay. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to make a registration path. Now this is where things get a bit exciting because registration is not actually provided as a as a view itself in Django. So we will have to use our own view. So as you can see, there is a views.py file here where we can create our own view. We will quickly create a register view, and yeah, Django mandates that all views should have this request as a parameter. Yeah. Okay. Now, as we are using the inbuilt user field, we also can have use of the inbuilt user creation form itself. So we will just actually import that also from Django dot contrib dot auth dot models dot auth dot forms import user creation form. So what this form will do is that it will just create a form for us that will enable in user creation. So first of all, we will have to, okay, so first we will instantiate the user creation form. Yeah. Now we have to make sure that this is actually a get request. So because if it's a post request, that means that the user is trying to register currently. So we will first check if the request method is actually post. Now if it is post, that means that the form has some filled data. So now we will just quickly collect the filled data from request.post. Okay. Now that the form has been pre-filled with data, now we will check if the form is valid. So what this does is it runs a lot of tests to just see that all the fields that we have filled in the form are actually valid and they are not some sort of a SQL injection attack or any sort of other attack, and that these are actually valid. So here, once it is valid, we can just directly save it, and yeah, okay. And once we have saved this form, we can, yeah, okay. So at this point, the form is saved. Now this was all for a post request. If it is not a post request, then we should create an empty form. Okay. So ideally, after this point, we should actually redirect to dashboard. But the problem is that we have actually not created a dashboard itself yet. So first of all, let us go and do that then. So for now, I will comment this out. Yeah, and I will create a dashboard path. Okay. Again, I will have to use a dashboard view, which I will get from submissions.views, import views. Now views.dashboard, and then as it's good practice, we should also name it as dashboard. Okay. So for views, we will quickly create a dashboard view with the request parameter. Okay. So whenever a person wants to view the dashboard, they will have to see a particular template. So in order for us to render that template, we will use Django's render command, which will actually take in first object as its request. And the second will be the directory in which the template is present. So if we see here, we are passing the link to the directory called submission slash dashboard.html. So we will go to the templates folder that we made. We will create our submissions folder here, and inside this we will make a dashboard.html. Okay. So in this, I will go and I will make h1 hello, welcome to your dashboard. Okay. So now we will actually try to see if this works. So I will quickly just comment out this register function since it is incomplete. Okay. So is the server showing any errors? No. Okay. And now if I go here, if I go to dashboard, yeah, hello, welcome to your dashboard. We see it. Okay, so now we are successfully getting it to the dashboard. So what we want this to do is once yeah, so similarly the way that we actually rendered it for dashboard, we will also have to render a view for the registration form itself. So that will also be return render. We will do some request and then we will have a submission slash register dot html. And yeah, so now what the issue comes is that we have to pass this form alongside. So what Django allows is that in this render we can have this third option called arguments. As we see, we can send a context. So the context is basically a dictionary of arguments which we can send. So we will just quickly create that dictionary called args, and in that we will have the form to be the form here, and we will pass that to submission slash register. So now we will go to submissions. We will create a new register.html, and here we have a register. And similar to the login view, we need a form. So we will just quickly take this form and we will add it to register. And this button will of course be a register button. Okay. Now that portion is done. When the person is saved, we would want them to go back to login and then they can access our platform. So for login, we have defined that the name of that URL is login. So we can directly redirect them to that. So for redirecting, we also import a function called redirect, and we will redirect the user to login. Okay, so this should work now. Let us check if the server has any issues. No, the server is not showing any issues. We will go here. Okay, now if I go to register, and okay, for register, I haven't created a path. Yeah, so for URLs, okay, I had hidden this. Here we have views.register, and the name is register. Commas at the end. So yeah, so this creates the user registration form with all of this pre-built in. So now this actually our web page, we have like the basic user function. We have a login, we have a logout, and we have a register. But actually, what we have done in making this is that we have used three different files, and we are reusing a lot of HTML code. This HTML code is there in all files. So one of the great things that Django has is something called template extending. So what we can do is we can make a base HTML file where we will declare the HTML that is required for all the files that need this. So now this particular piece of code will be present in all the templates that we are defining. So then you will ask that how can we then customize it? So the way that Django does is that it provides us with blocks. So now I can create a block called content, and then I can end this block also. Yeah, so in this block content, now what happens is, let's say that I want to just show this portion in the block content. No, so I will redefine the block content here, and I will also end the block, and then I will just define h1 as welcome to the dashboard. Okay. But now this file doesn't actually know that it has to take the remaining code from base. So what we will do is we will just instruct the templating language to extend the base.html file to generate the dashboard. Now let us see how the dashboard is rendered. As you can see, now there is no difference and all that code has also been integrated to it. So now the website does not look very good. So what we will do is we will use Bootstrap. Uh, we will just get bootstrap.com. We can directly quickly get the CDN files for it. we will copy it, and we can add this to our base.html. We'll add this right here. So now what this does is that I have added it just to one place, and it will now be reflected to every single page which extends from it. So let's say that now in this, I will remove all this. I will create the block content. I will end block, and yeah, I will extends base.html. Okay. So now the login page should also be like this, and then the register page was also pretty similar. Okay, so now we have one, two, three, and four templates, out of which all three are extending the base. Okay, so now if I just reload it, I see that the basic bootstrap now has been loaded in. So that was just now if I go to, let's say, login, then it is now being generated with bootstrap. And now I can also, for example, add all the bootstrap classes. So I can make this button primary, and that would make the bootstrap page like this. Okay, but now when we go to register, we see that the form itself is actually not looking very good. So for that, there is another Django app called Django Crispy Forms. So what this does is it will basically generate the entire form in the particular bootstrap format. So for that, as it's a Python package, we will quickly just install that using pip. So Django Crispy Forms. Django. Okay, now that it has been installed, we have to make sure that our project knows that we have to use it. So in our settings.py in installed apps, we will go to, we will add Crispy Forms here. And for Crispy Forms, actually, like you can see on the documentation page, they provide a lot of formats. So there are template packs. So Bootstrap, Bootstrap 3, Bootstrap 4, and Uniform. There is also Foundation and Tailwind. So in this case, we will actually be using the Bootstrap 4. So to make sure that Crispy knows how to actually do that, in the settings.py, we will create a Crispy template pack argument, and it will be called Bootstrap 4. Okay. Now, how do we actually use this? So first of all, what Crispy does is it actually gives us extra tags so that we can display forms better. So first of all, what we have to do is we have to load these Crispy forms tags. Once we have loaded it, I can directly call the form and apply the Crispy tag on it. So now this was the register page. No, I'll just make sure that this also shows that. I'll add some button success, let's say, and I'll all put this in a div, which is a container and has mx3 and mt3. Okay. Now if I go to the registration page, okay, I haven't restarted the server. Python manage.py run server. Okay. Wait, why is there something wrong? Setting Crispy template pack is Bootstrap 4. I'll actually just make sure that there were no typing errors. Template pack, yeah, we want it to be Bootstrap 4. Okay. Now is the server running? Yes, the server is running. Yeah. Now you can see that now we have a beautiful Bootstrap form which is being generated. So all this needed was our particular login.html, our register form to load these tags, and then to just add it to apply this to the form. So similarly for this, we will also do it for the login form so that it looks good. I will, yeah, I'll actually just copy paste it since a lot is common. We have login. This we will make it as a primary color, and then this could be login. Okay, great. And yeah, Also, as we saw earlier, actually, whenever we do a particular login, what it was doing is that it was redirecting us to the accounts page, which we do not want. So we can actually set that also in our settings. So what we will do is we will mention that login URL is this, is the home page, which is basically where we have to log in. And the login redirect URL should be slash dashboard. Okay, then similarly for logout URL is slash logout, and the logout redirect URL should be our home page. So now if I try to log out, let's see what happens. It will go to the login page. That is the home page. Now if I once I'm in my login page, it will go to the dashboard. Okay. So this was the entire of the this part. Actually, I will also show that registration also works. So if I put my name Anirudh and I will use some password. Now, yeah, what Django comes in is that it also has a lot of, it also mentions the issue, the constraints that everything should have, and also it shows errors. Like, for example, the password fields didn't match. Okay, so now I will make sure that I use the proper passwords for both this or register. Okay, have I been registered? I think there was something wrong in the views. Wait, okay, a redirect to login when form is saved. Okay, yeah. So now if I go to admin, I can see in users, my user has been created here. Okay, great. So now if I log out, done. Okay. So now comes, so now that we have done this, we have the dashboard and we have the base. Okay. Okay, now so user management is complete. Now we will have to do the submissions management. So first of all, we will create within the dashboard, we will be able to see all the particular submissions that we have. So for that, first let us import from submissions.models. Let us import the submission class. And then from submissions, we will get submissions.objects.all. Now this is the ORM that was mentioned in the initial page. So submission.objects.all will actually just convert to some SQL in the background, and it will run from the on the database, and it will return us whatever we want. So now we will just add this as an argument. Submissions is submissions, and we will pass this through as argument. Okay, now on dashboard, that means that now we can see all the submissions that are being made. So if I make a list, I will first check if submissions are present. Else, I will display that. Yeah, I will display that there are no submissions. Yeah, if there are submissions, then I will show that. Yeah, then for every submission for S in submissions, I will show and for, and yeah, I will just add it as a list item for s.id and s.user.name. Okay, so this will now, let us see what comes up. Now right now there are no submissions here. So oh wait, I've done it as end form. Sorry, that's a typo. And for, yeah, so now we see that there are actually no submissions. Yeah, so actually what we want to do is that for a particular user, if they are actually the judge, that means if they are the super user, then they should see the admin dashboard, and if they are like a normal student, then they should see a student dashboard. So right now this is actually showing all submissions which we do not want for students to be able to see. So this we will actually just rename it as admin dashboard. Yeah, and in views also we'll make sure that we are actually rendering this to admin dashboard. Yeah. Okay, so first we will check that if the request user is a super user. If they are indeed a super user, then we will actually show them this admin dashboard. Otherwise, we will show them the submission slash student dashboard dot html with arguments passed. Okay, yeah. Also, one more thing that would be good for us to show is actually if a particular student has already made a submission. So let us try to get the submission that the user that student has made. So sub dot objects dot I will filter by user to be the request dot user, and then I will get the first instance of that. And then in args, I will actually add submission. Okay, yeah. So now I will quickly just create the student dashboard.html file. I will copy most of this because welcome to the student dashboard. I'll make sure. And yeah, for this, it will be if there is a submission. Yeah, then we actually just have to print that you have made a submission. Else we can say add submission. Okay, and we'll just end this if statement. Okay, so now if we go back to our admin, yeah, so since I had logged in as a student, I am seeing the student dashboard, and since I have not made any submission, I am seeing the add submission text. Now let me log in back as the admin. Now I see that it is just the normal dashboard, and I see that there are no submissions. Okay, great. Now we have two different dashboards for all the students. Now we should create the submission form. So another nice thing about Django is that we can like create a form just from Python itself. We can define how the form should look like. So for that, we will actually have to create a forms.py file, and then from Django.forms, we will import the model form. So what the model form does is that it makes a form which links directly to one of the models that we have made. So in our case, that is what we want to do. We want the user to make a submission, and when that is done, it will directly apply to the submissions table. So yeah, and also from submissions.models, we have to import the submission class. Okay, so now we will define first add submission form, which will inherit from model form. Okay, so one amazing feature of model forms is actually the fact that we can just specify what model and what all fields we want the form to display. We do not have to define every single field that has to come up. So to define just what models and all we need, we will add it to the meta class, where we will define the model as submissions. I think this has been added. Yeah, the model should be submission, and the fields that we want to display. So the student should only be able to enter the URL. So the only field that we should show is the URL field. Okay. And now when the admin is adding marks, add marks form, we have the model form again. And in the class meta, we will add model is submission, and we will add fields to be actually they will only should be able to add the marks. They should not be able to edit the URL or what the user is. They should only have to add the marks. So that is what this does. Okay, great. So now we have the different forms. Let's go to our views, and we will create a corresponding view for both of them. So first let us import it from forms. We import add marks form and add submission form. Okay, def add marks. Okay, first let's do a def add submissions. That would be a request. Yeah, and similar to the register form, we just need to display a form. So actually we'll just reuse this code, and the only difference that has to be made is that instead of a user creation form, we need to do an add submission form. And a user creation form, add submission form, and instead of going to register, we go to add submission. Yeah. Also, one other thing that we have to do is, so since the form is actually only showing the URL, we have to make sure that the model will actually store the user from who is actually making the request. So this part will actually be a bit different. What we will do is we will show that the submission, we will create an instance of the submission, but we will not save it to the database. So what this command does is that it creates an instance of the submission class called s, and it saves all the data from the form, but it doesn't commit. So if it doesn't commit, that means it does not actually write it to the database. So now we have to import the user to this. So we will also actually just import the from Django.contrib.auth.model. We will import the user model. Yeah. And we have to actually do that. S.user is user.objects.get. We have to get the user that actually made this request. So request.user.id. Yeah, and we have to get it by ID. Okay. So once we can define what the S is, then we just save it and we can redirect them back to their dashboard. Otherwise, we have to add their submission and then we can add submissions. Okay, great. So now we should make this add submission.html. Now I think you will also have understood the flow of like making an application. First we define the view, then we make the template, and then at the end we will define the URL to connect that view to the server. So the add submission is also basically a form only. So we'll just copy paste this form here. This will be add submission, and we can add the submission here. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, now we've made the view, we've made this, and now we'll just add it to the URL. So now we can do add submission. We get views dot add submission, and name should be add submission. Okay. Now is the server running? Yes, the server is running without any error. Okay. So now if I go to add submission, yeah, I can see that I have to enter a URL and it will add that submission. So let's say I enter one of the URLs that is actually provided in my cache. I add this submission, and the submission should have been made now. So if I go to submissions, I see that admin has created this submission. Okay, so now the submission form is also working. So now if I log in as admin, yeah, on my this I have seen that actually I was just displaying on the not add submission, I have admin dashboard. Yeah, so for SID I am displaying the ID of the submission, the username. Actually I'll also display the submission URL so that it becomes unambiguous. Okay, so on this I see, okay, so this submission URL is also available. Now for a particular submission we should also be able to wait, I will just restart this quickly. Then manage.py run serve. Okay. Okay. Now this admin should actually also be able to look at a particular submission and be able to add marks. For that we have this add marks form. So let us quickly just make a view for that too. Okay, so def add marks. We have request. Now, one of the most unique things about this function is that we will actually require to add marks to one specific submission. So for that, we will actually need to know the primary key of that submission. So we will also take in primary key as a parameter, and from this we will actually get submission dot objects dot get ID is primary key. So this will now load our submission which we need, and then again it is simply just a matter of generating the form which we will do. Instead of add submission form, we will do add marks form. Then we will do add marks form. Okay, now the difference in this is that instead of actually having to provide a user, we have to update the marks to this particular submission. So we will do form.save with commit is false, and then we can do submission dot marks equal to s dot marks, and then we can just save our submission. Okay, so now we'll save it and we go back to our dashboard. Otherwise we show the marks form. Okay, and in this we should also render our submission so that it can be showed on the front end. So add marks. Now similar to what the flow we have been doing till now. Now we create a new template for submission. So add marks.html. We will copy most of this code because it isn't very different. Okay. Now the only thing is that the evaluator should also be able to see who has actually made all these made that particular submission. So we will also just provide that information to them. So yeah, we will show that submission dot user dot username, and we will show the submission dot URL, and we will do this as add marks. Okay. So yeah, now we've done the view, we've done the template. Now we need to add this to the URL. So path, we will do add marks. Now we remember that we have to do this for one particular thing. So in the path, how we define that is in these angled brackets, we define what the data type of that parameter will be and what the type of the parameter is. So the primary key we want to get is an integer. So this is how it will work. From views dot, we will just do add marks, and name is add marks. Okay. So now let me restart this. Clear, and yeah, Python. I'm running the server. Okay. So now that I get this, I can do add marks. Now if I run this, it will show that the page is not found because actually add marks needs an integer. So now once I add this integer, now I can see that the admin has made this, and this is their submission link that they have sent, and this is the marks that I should enter. So let's say that I enter 10 marks. I will add marks, and then now the marks have been added. So now if I go to dashboard, I'll go to the admin panel. I can see that submissions, admin has been awarded 10 marks. Okay, great. Now if I like go in with the other user, yeah, so they should be also able to add submission. So actually on the student dashboard, I will just directly make a link. You have not made a submission, add submission, and I will just directly make a link to this. So because that we have named all of the links, what we can do is we can directly get Django to actually generate the link. So we only need to do add submission to this, and then we can do add submission it here, and then this will provide us with the add submission URL. Okay, so now it has been added. If I go to the dashboard of that particular person, it will show that I have already made a submission. Now, since that it has we have made a submission, we can also display what the submission marks were. So let's say we have submission dot marks. Okay. So for now, none because it has not been evaluated. Okay. So now we have like covered all segments of it. One last thing to do is just to make the scoreboard. So again, with the same thing, we will first create a view. For it, we will have def scoreboard. One second. Yeah, we have def scoreboard. It will take request. Then it will take submissions. Submission dot objects dot all, and what it will do is it will just order by negative of marks because we want the highest marks to be displayed first. So once this is done, then we can just add it as argument. We have submissions is actually our submission, and we return render the request, and we do submission slash scoreboard dot html, and we pass the arguments. Sorry. And in submission we will add just scoreboard dot html. We won't need to load any form, so we can remove this. And yeah, Here we can display the scoreboard, and then we can display the list. And for S in submissions, we can do end for, and this will be a list item of the s.id and s.user.username, and we have s.marks. Okay, now we'll just add the URL to it, and then we are basically done. Use dot scoreboard, name is scoreboard. Yeah, and now if I go to scoreboard, I see that uh, wait, just there are submissions. Yeah, so for this submission I will enter 20 marks. Let's say I'll save it for this. Yeah, and I'll save it, and we will go log out, and we will do yeah, we have to go to scoreboard. Scoreboard. Okay, is there some typo in the code? Okay, for essence submissions. Yeah. So now I can see the scoreboard. So this is a very this is a very primitive evaluation platform where a particular user can register themselves. They can log in, and they can provide their submission URLs. The judge can go through it, and we can then yeah, and the judge can go through it. They can award the particular marks to it, and then we can also display a final scoreboard with every particular person and their and the marks that they have been awarded. So this was the webinar. In the description, there is also a link to a GitHub repo, which has a bit more. So what the only additions in there is that I have used a bit more Bootstrap. I have added navigation bars, and I have added a few tables just so that the website looks a bit better. But otherwise, this is like the core functionality of creating a Django app for these evaluation processes. And we are also going to be using a bit more scaled up version of this app. So this is like a bit simpler version of the app that we will actually be using for the evaluation of the original HackVerse hackathon. So yeah.
Thanks, Anirudh, for your uh, enlightening talk. Next, does anyone have questions? We'll wait. If you guys had any uh, if you guys are seeing this video later on, you can always ask Anirudh doubts on his LinkedIn and other social media handles that he can give in the description. So if we, I think there is no doubt here, so we can conclude today's webinar by saying that do join us for HackVerse 3.0. We'll be conducting more of these informative sessions in the coming days, and we hope that you'll join us for more. Don't forget to check out and follow HackVerse 3.0's website, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn pages. The link to website is given below, and we'll put other links. We have put other links on the description on YouTube channel. We'll soon be having the first wave of results, uh, so stay tuned and register soon if you haven't. Thank you for attending the webinar today.